My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you pardon for my sins and the grace to make these moments of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Today the Gospel takes us to the Sea of Tiberias, and our context there is that time of light and shadow when Jesus had resurrected, but everything was still unclear for the apostles. They had the joy of knowing that Jesus was alive, but the great uncertainty of what their life would now mean. We find ourselves, as the Gospel will later tell us, on the occasion of the third time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after the resurrection. And as we see them there, they seem to be listless. The pain of seeing Jesus crucified has faded behind the awareness of his resurrection, but they are somehow without direction. Without him beside them, they don't know what to do. Not just what to do this afternoon, but what to do with their lives. We hear the Gospel tell us. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 more of his disciples were there together. Simon Peter said, "I'm going fishing." They replied, "We'll come with you." They went out and got into the boat, but caught nothing that night. We could put ourselves with them in the boat. A long night fishing. No longer than any other, of course, just with that sense of listlessness exacerbated by the long hours of catching nothing. There they find themselves in quiet and in solitude on the sea. I imagine that there were few words said among them that night, as each one went about his work. But finally, those long hours give way, and in the east, the first light of dawn casts its rays into the sky. Day is coming again, as it always does. That scene seems a bit like so many people, Jesus, who sit at the periphery of a genuine relationship with you, knowing, at least tacitly believing, that you have risen and are real. Sometimes much more so, sometimes even being sincere with a desire to live their faith, but a little bit lost, a little bit listless, in a world of so much glittering distraction. The sea, of course, glitters at night, as the moon shimmers over it. Like so many things in nature, it's a scene that you can love in particular if you pause to consider it. You could, in fact, spend hours contemplating it. Those apostles, of course, had seen it so many times that they probably didn't think anything of it. But you and I, if we had time to pause, might want to stop, contemplate it, and think about it. You look at that shimmering water, you look at the way the soft and dark light of the moon seems to make it glitter, but you never think of trying to capture that glittering moonlight. That would be a vacuous enterprise destined to failure. You can contemplate it, though, and through that contemplation come to the one who created it. If only the same were true of all these worldly things that glitter, Lord. So many times we just end up getting caught by those glittering things and chase a fulfillment that we can never find in those shimmering unrealities. There are so many things like that, even down to our phones. The other day I was listening to a podcast about technology and its effect on the brain. It's the same kind of stuff that probably most of us will have heard plenty of times before, but it's always interesting to learn a bit more, especially as people discover more and more about the science of what goes on and how these things actually affect us far more than we're intuitively aware. This fellow was talking about the way that people make software and the way they tailor it to become addictive so that it attracts you back time and again. And it made me think back to my own days in software development. Because, of course, years ago, we had a different ideal in the software development industry. We wanted to make things that were efficient, useful, the kind of thing that was so efficient and easy to use that you would get a job done in the minimum time possible. That at the end of it, you would feel satisfied because you realized you'd done something productive in the shortest space of time possible and feel good about what you'd done. feel good about the productive capacity that you'd exercised. Nowadays, it's not about helping people to get the job done in the minimum time possible, but about getting people to spend the maximum time possible using your app. The podcast, of course, talked about the colors used in software, the way that those things seem so shiny and so nice and want to pull us back, that just something in our brain makes us go back to those strangely attractive things. Unlike that glittering of the moonlight on the sea, those things are designed to attract us to the thing itself and not to the reason for its existence. The phone, in reality, exists to be used. But we end up becoming a tool used by the phone, rather than the phone a tool for us to use. Of course, that can apply to everything. But if we're always clutching and grasping for those shimmering, glittering things, whether stuff on a phone or perhaps more consumerist trifles that the multi-million-dollar marketing of multinational companies convinces us are really worthwhile and even necessary. If we're always clutching and grasping for those shimmering, glittering things, we'd end up no better than if the apostles spent their night clutching and grasping for the moonlight shimmering and glittering on the sea, and if that were the case, they would never have looked up to see Jesus. What if the apostles had never seen you there, Lord? But they don't really see you. The Gospel tells us it was light by now, and there stood Jesus on the shore, though the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. They don't immediately understand, not fully. It's a bit like us when you call us closer to yourself. You don't overwhelm us with something more shiny than the other shiny stuff around us. Rather, something deep in our heart looks out into the distance for the thing that will truly satisfy it, because time and again it experiences that all that glitter doesn't ever leave a person feeling content. But there you are, in the distance, on the shore. They see you there in the hazy uncertainty of those twilight hours, still so much unsure. I think of the countless times that I've spoken with people who see you as a shadowy figure, not because you hide, but because they're a little distant from you, and see you only at the twilight of the interior life, at the outset of a real relationship with you. And who was this figure, half hidden in the half light, not fully seen by the apostles? The Gospel goes on. Jesus called out, "Have you caught anything, friends?" Lord, you call them friends. Literally, in fact, the word is children, little children. And of course, figuratively, we know that that means beloved. You called out to them as your beloved, which perhaps is an unusual thing for someone on the beach to call out to people on a boat, to be fair. But even with that, they still don't recognize you. But you ask them, "Have you caught anything, friends?" And the Gospel goes on. When they answered, "No," he said, "Throw the net out to the starboard, and you'll find something." So they dropped the net, and there were so many fish that they could not haul it in. The disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." At these words, "It is the Lord," Simon Peter, who was naked, wrapped his cloak around him and jumped into the water. There goes Peter with that impetuosity again. He forgets everything in his desire to see you. Life can't be like that always, but every now and then, we just need to jump into the water and swim towards God. That's particularly the way that we should be when we feel the deep yearning in our soul for something more. When the eternity of our soul starts longing to be satiated with something more than glittering trifles, when we feel that none of that satisfies. That's when we leap out into the ocean to get closer to God. But to where do we swim though? We don't have everything as clear, since even in the twilight of those morning hours, Peter could still see Jesus on the shore. He simply knew he had to swim, and to swim in that direction. For us, sometimes we feel that we don't know in what direction we ought to swim. Many times, even we can feel that we don't know how to swim at all. So what do we do? Well, there's prayer, of course. We always have prayer. That's the first recourse we have always and everywhere. But one thing helps more than everything else. If we don't have Jesus there on the seashore who gives us the direction in which we ought to move, we look for a friend around us who can direct us to him. So many times there will be someone, a friend who lives a life of prayer, perhaps, or maybe a cousin or a grandparent, a priest at the local parish, or the chaplain you used to know so many years ago. Just one person can give us the direction that we need in order to know how to move away from a life that doesn't satisfy and towards a life which leaves us fully alive. Jesus, now in this Easter time, we see you fully alive and calling us to share in that life. How many souls have found so much satisfaction when they have made that leap to enter into something deeper, to enter into the eternal life that satisfies the soul and that is found only in you. Help us all to get closer to that life and to what truly satisfies, especially in this Easter time that you fill with so much grace. Our Mother Mary, help us to recognize the frailty and insipidness of a life lived aside from life itself, and then to seek the satisfaction of our souls in your Son, Jesus Christ. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which you have communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your assistance in putting them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.